Welcome in, everyone, to another live edition of the Hawks Eye podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Coutts, and with me for this preview show is Mookie Alexander from Field Gulls, and we're going to be talking Seahawks versus the Colts on this one. We're going to give you guys some key updates that occurred today from the Seahawks, a contract extension, some activations, one surprising one I think that might have surprised a lot of us that actually ended up getting activated. And then we'll dive into the numbers and really give you guys a breakdown of this matchup for tomorrow with the Colts and Seahawks. Mookie, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. We got Father Christmas to look forward to in a couple of weeks, and we've got Grandfather Phil to look forward to tomorrow, apparently.
Yeah, no kidding, right? That is an interesting situation into its own right, and we'll definitely dive into that. But before we do, if you guys haven't already, help me and help this channel. Like and subscribe to the Hawks Eye podcast. Also, head over to Field Gulls. Check out all the work we got going on over there. Mookie and the crew over there do a phenomenal job over at Field Gulls. But for the show here, I'm just over 1,500 subscribers. I'm trying to get to 2,000 before the end of the season. So if you got some friends that love Seahawks content, make sure to share the podcast their way. Also, on another note, some exciting news before we get into this. I got my acceptance credentials for Senior Bowl, so I will be down live in Mobile in January for Senior Bowl, covering all things draft and Seahawks related down there. I believe Brandon Kane from the Hawks Nest will be down there, as well as Dan Villa and some Seahawks Forever. So there'll maybe be a few syndicate shows that happen on location down in Mobile, Alabama this January. So again, thank you all for your support. It made it very much a possibility for me to be able to attend Senior Bowl this year. And so with that, Mookie, let's get into this conversation right after this. All right, Mookie. And you know what? People are taking notice of the Christmas holiday motif I've got going on here with our little Seahawks snowman down in the corner in the Christmas tree. So this will be up all through December, everybody. This will be the background you'll see on the show. But Mookie, let's talk about some of these Seahawks updates today. So obviously the first one, let's talk about this. Eric Saubert with a contract extension, which to me is interesting because I didn't think Eric Saubert had a massive market this free agency period. So to see him get a contract extension, I think really, speaks to kind of what I thought, in the offseason, that he was going to be someone that they view as a key part of this offense and of this team going forward.
Yeah, it is odd that you end up with a contract extension on a guy who's already on a one-year deal. Normally extensions are a little bit longer than that. So for some background, I'll credit Curtis Allen and Brady Henderson for this. Eric Saubert was signed to, I believe, what is called the Veteran Salary Benefit, so the VSB. And that's why they did that weird thing where they randomly cut him before the trade deadline, before he even went to injured reserve. And then they brought him back on a one-year deal. That is a non-veteran's salary benefit. So they couldn't give him an extension on the VSB, but they can on a normal one-year deal. And as a result, we don't know the details of his extension, but he's here through next season. And he's the veteran here. So any thought of like Nick Callerup has essentially replaced Saubert. We were talking about, is Saubert even going to come back from IR if Callerup is just going to be sticking around like this? Well, a couple of factors here. One, obviously they still like Saubert. And, it wasn't like Saubert was doing anything bad. In fact, he's been better than Callerup. Callerup has made his fair share of rookie mistakes. The promise is there. The potential is there for him to be kind of the new Eric Saubert down the line. And the second bit is the tight end situation totally changed with Elijah Arroyo not going to be back anytime soon. So in the short term, you're going to have AJ Barner as your top tight end. And now I'm curious to see what they do as far as target distribution, because Saubert and Callerup have 1 catch combined on the year and maybe 3 targets total. So that means any tight end targets are probably going to be going to AJ Barner for the foreseeable future. But in terms of the blocking, where Arroyo still falls a bit short, and so does Callerup for that matter, I think that it should be, at least to me, a help for the run game, because Saubert is normally pretty assignment correct. He should be around for chipping edge rushers and pass plays, but also just helping set the edge on the offensive side of the ball for the run game to succeed a little bit more. So good for Saubert to stick around. I mean, he is that type of I don't want to say glue guy, but that type of depth piece that is oftentimes overlooked when you're looking at good offenses and very good offenses, and the willingness to stick to what Seattle wants in terms of their identity, in terms of running the ball and then using play action and using heavy personnel as much as they do.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think in some respects in our run game we've been missing a little bit is Eric Saubert's ability to come in and be that really good blocking tight end for us. That's what he's known for, whether it's pass or run blocking. And I think in some respects, a lot of that got put on AJ Barner and Nick Callerup when he ended up getting his not his activation, but getting active reps in games as a tight end. Now, the other part of this that's interesting is there were obviously some spots to fill on the active 53-man roster, I believe 3 to be precise, and they filled all of them with Jalen Sundell is now coming back and is activated for this game on Sunday, as is Eric Saubert. And then the other one that was rather interesting is Riley Mills got an activation to the 53. What do you make of the Riley Mills situation, Mookie?
Yeah, I don't know how much of a role he can feasibly play when he's had no training camp, anything, no preseason reps. He didn't do any offseason activities other than just rehab and recover from his ACL tear suffered pretty much a year ago, because it was December when the college football playoff started, and he got hurt in that game against Indiana, I believe. So for Mills, I think he'll slowly get into the rotation, maybe play a handful of snaps. I mean, if we get to see garbage time in this game against the Colts, maybe we get to see Riley Mills' debut. But I'm not expecting a whole lot in terms of contributions. What I do believe is going to happen is in such garbage time situations, Mike Morris is not playing. He incidentally got fined for that really asinine roughing the passer that he committed. I don't think they're going to healthy scratch Morris because he does play a lot on special teams, but Mills would probably just take Morris's spot in the rotation. And, there isn't the same having to figure out which position Mills is good at versus where they're trying to move Morris all over the shop and he's really just not very good at anything to justify more snaps. So I'm kind of looking at this as Mills gets to have a little bit of experience on an NFL roster, but that he is still somebody that we got to think about in the long term instead of what he can do in the short term. If he contributes anything even in garbage time this year, I'll take that as a positive. But otherwise, I just find it interesting that they even did activate him in the first place, as opposed to just redshirting him for the whole year.
Yeah, that was definitely for me something where I looked at it and I went, okay, is he going to come in and help on specials for a bit? Will he be a garbage time rotational player to get him some reps and get him some live action? And the thing is, I kind of like if they're going to bring him back, do it now, not going into the playoffs or whatnot. Like you're giving him a few games, this game, the Rams game, Panthers and 49ers. So again, when we're in the playoffs and maybe he does have to play more because someone gets nicked up, like say Morris were to get nicked up and we need someone to eat some of those special teams reps, you have a guy that similar body can do similar things. Hopefully it helps you out in that way. So the interesting thing also, obviously Elijah Arroyo has been put on IR. So I believe, Mookie, you posted that they're allowed to bring 2 more players back from IR, and they've got Young, Horton, now Elijah Arroyo, obviously, which puts him right up to the bubble of the end of the season. And I'm trying to think of the other individual that I'm missing off that list. Who am I missing?
So it's Derek Young, Holani, Arroyo, Surratt.
Holani. Thank you, Surratt.
Yeah,
that's the other 2.
And the timing of Arroyo is that there are only 4 games left in the regular season. So his regular season's already over.
Yeah.
So that means they have 4 spots now of players who can come off of injured reserve over the next few weeks, but only 2 regular season spots available. So Derek Young is almost certainly going to take one of those 2 spots because he's been a full practice participant. He is a kick returner. And given that they're out of elevations for Velas Jones, I assume that when Young comes back, he essentially goes back to his kick return role and other special teams things and ends up being that, depth piece at wide receiver. But Holani, I'm a little more optimistic that he could come back because if you notice, right now they've only got 2 running backs rostered, Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. So they've elevated Velas Jones, but they're out of elevations. They signed Cam Akers to the practice squad, and I assume that they'll just elevate him for the Rams game, for example. But Holani can come back week 17. And maybe, just maybe, they're just kind of biding their time so that Holani can come back. They got the 3 backs anyway. The question marks are for the regular season only are Surratt and Horton. And nothing against Chaz Surratt, is a very good special teams player, but Torrey Horton's a little bit more important in the pecking order. And I don't think Surratt's coming back this season. If you have NFL Pro, just go to the All-22, find Chaz Surratt's last play from the Titans game, and watch how badly his ankle gets turned. And if you watch the television copy, he could put no weight on that ankle. I think he's done for the year. But Torrey Horton, I'm a little bit concerned about because Mike Macdonald continues to be vague about this. He could come back week 16, but one, it's a short week, so it's probably not happening. But even still, we're still doing imaging on this, and we're trying to figure some things out. Bryce, you and I were texting a bit on this, but we're kind of wondering if Horton has got something a little more serious than they've realized, and we might not see him this season, again this season.
So the Horton one's interesting, Mookie, because when it happened and then the trade for Rashid happened relatively soon, within a couple of weeks, I started to think that Horton cracked his leg and cracked maybe his tibia or something in that shin area. Wouldn't surprise me. It's not the first time we've seen a player take a hit to a shin like that in an NFL game and end up breaking something down there. The fact that it's been so vague, that they're still imaging it, that they're still doing things with it, that it's one of, like, that's where for me, and again, I think this is one of the things when you look at Torrey Horton's build, he does have very slender legs. And so when you get some of those situations where you may get, leg whip or anything like that, or someone hits it in the right spot, like these are things that could happen. I start to wonder with Torrey Horton if this is a situation where he did do something. Maybe they're going, okay, we have to do imaging because do we have to go in surgically to fix something? And that's what my thought is. And that's why I think you saw Seattle didn't really mess around with the opportunity of getting another guy that has similar speed, a similar skill set, and Rashid Shaheed. And everyone was like, well, why'd they give up a 4th and a 5th? It probably was a situation for John Schneider. And we're like, hey, there is this potential. We may not get Torrey Horton back, and we may not get the speed back to our receiving core. We need to make sure we get something that can help us still be an effective offense.
Yeah. Our field goals colleague Alexander Castro said in our little field goals office room, he might be Paul Richardson 2.0. And I'm not going there yet because Horton didn't have as many injury issues. Like Paul Richardson, I think, had an ACL tear in college, and he had other injuries in college, and he continued to get injured with the Seahawks, even though he was a good player when healthy. He just his body broke down on him. But another thing to note is if for teams that make the playoffs, and Seattle have to have an all-time collapse to miss the playoffs at this point, you get 2 extra spots to come off of injured reserve and onto the active roster. So even still, that means you've got 4 spots. Let's assume Seattle makes the playoffs. You've got 2 for the regular season you can still use and 2 for the playoffs. They've got 5 guys on IR who could come back at some point this year and only 4 spots. So by default, you can do the math. Somebody's going to be missing out. And we're still trying to figure out what the future, what lies ahead for Torrey Horton. With Arroyo, I mean, even that was kind of vague because Mike Macdonald went from day to day to now he's on IR. And, that's a little bit interesting to me as to how quickly that happened, whether he was just being coy with the media like he usually is with injury updates. But I must admit that for as much as I've been high on Elijah Arroyo and what he could do for this offense, and we've been talking about getting in the ball more often, the targets to him have been very inefficient. Like about half the targets thrown to him have been either incomplete or intercepted. And the route that he ran that led to the pick, bad decision by Darnold, no questions asked. But that felt like a very clunky route all the way from Arroyo. And you could see him kind of limp around after the interception. So he might have had a blown tire to begin with. And now they're going to have to get that cleaned up in the meantime. But it certainly changes the dynamic of the offense a bit that Arroyo is thought to be a receiving tight end. Callerup and Saubert are not. So who kind of replaces Arroyo's targets at this point? I mean, is it going to be more targets to AJ Barner? Are they going to run more 11 personnel and passing looks? Does Jake Bobo get back into the fray here, because he's been kind of teetering on the edge, healthy scratch or hardly playing? So there's a whole lot to figure out in terms of what the Seahawks do with their passing game. But sucks for Arroyo, and it's kind of incredible to me. Like, half of this draft class has been on IR at some point. Like, Horton is right now, and so is Arroyo. Uch just had an IR stint. And I'm forgetting the fourth person. Well, Riley Mills started the season on a form of injury reserve, but on the non-football injury list. So, and even Warriors missed time. So, just knock on wood that Gray Zabel has been able to go the distance up to this point, because it's been a pretty banged up start for this otherwise very promising rookie class.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me, like, with the Arroyo injury, is you basically drafted that guy to be your number 2 this year behind Barner, and maybe even that's where your role was, but you never effectively figured out how to use him correctly. And, the more we saw Caleb, and even to the point before Saubert's injury, we saw more of Saubert and Barner on the field together than we did see Arroyo. So I wonder if Saubert becomes more of a viable receiving option in some of these two tight end sets. Yes, the targets probably go, but I think we may see an uptick a little bit, even, Mookie, to your point, in 11 personnel usage with, Rashid Shaheed now getting more familiar with this offense and with playing with Sam, and it makes the most sense. But the one, actually, I'll be honest, out of all the activations and of everything that's occurred in the last 24 hours with the Seahawks, I'm very interested to see what happens with Jalen Sundell on Sunday.
Yes.
If Jalen Sundell is, put right back into the starting lineup, which is what I expect to happen, it's something I figured is probably going to, when they kind of asked, Mike the last few weeks, hey, when Jalen comes back, is he going to be in the right guard competition? And then we hear Mike talk about the way he did about Anthony Bradford. I don't think that's happening anytime soon. Mookie, are you under the same impression you think Sundell will be the starting center come tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm torn between two minds here. What I don't want them to do is restart the Ethan Posick, Kyle Fuller thing that Pete did in 2021. Like, pick a center and let them play all the way. I don't want any, like, ease him back in. Either Sundell is starting or he's not. So Oluwatimi, I think, has been a benefit to the run game, but as I think you've mentioned before, some of the protection calls and some of the busts we're seeing with these blitzes that are not being picked up, they might be falling on Olu, and he's had some ugly reps that are not that different from Sundell's. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Sundell's had more time in this offense, and he's got more positional versatility in case something happens at right guard. So, or really at either guard position, but they've been playing him at right guard. I don't remember him getting too much left guard run in training camp, if at all. So, yeah, this is going to be fascinating to see. I think that if Sundell is ready, then they're just going to start him over Oluwatimi. And it's not like Olu had done poorly. It's just that Sundell has got the continuity there, that he's played more games than Oluwatimi throughout the year.
Yeah, I think they're going to go with Sundell personally, Mookie, because of the fact that you're going back to A, the continuity, B, I think he is better in the pass protection. I think Sundell might even maybe be better than he was beginning of the year in the run game, because he's had 4 weeks to kind of sit back and watch the things he potentially was doing wrong or missing and have an opportunity to correct them here. And so I think the other thing with, Sundell that I like as a run blocker, and I know he struggles sometimes the initial point of attack, is his ability to get to the second level. He is a much better guy getting his hands on linebackers and cutting off. And there's some interesting, things about whether or not Bradford's play will drop if Sundell's put back into the lineup. I think there's a conversation we made now that Sundell is back, and that the conversation by reporters have been brought up about him being moved to right guard, that may still be an option all the way through the end of the season, where if Bradford really starts to struggle, they may just, hey, Olu back in at center, Sundell kick over, Bradford, you're out. Like, that's where they may get to. I don't know if that competition will necessarily be finished at any point, and may just be something lingering over Bradford's head, that if he doesn't play properly, Sundell can easily move over to that spot.
Yeah, because it seems like it would take everybody else on the offensive line getting hurt for Christian Haynes to ever get a start. I mean, they've only absolutely played Haynes when somebody else is injured. So, and that really applies to both offensive line coaching staffs, whether it was Scott Huff last year or John Benton this year. Kind of the same theme has emerged. So, yeah, I think that Sundell still starts, but he is still like he's still the backup right guard in effect in case something happens to Bradford, because he did get injured. I mean, he hurt his elbow in that Vikings game. Then he picked up a calf thing in practice, and he was fine in the Atlanta game. In fact, he played quite well then. But it's just something to consider as far as what Sundell can do. And yes, he gets to the second level, but he's just a better athlete than Oluwatimi. And for all of my thoughts about Oluwatimi having a better anchor at the point of attack, he's had some snaps in pass pro and even in run blocking where he is instantly losing off the snap. So if he's not demonstrably better than Sundell, I don't think he should just be given the starting job for the sake of it. Because Sundell, he might be a little bit on the lighter side as a center, but he ain't Joey Hunt. And I don't mean by weight, I mean in ability.
So we'll talk about this a little bit more, Mookie, as we get into this offensive situation later on with how it's going to affect the run game against this Colts offense. But this is something I think we should discuss because we'll get into this preview. But the one thing for me, I think that, everyone's going to talk about with this game, in this Seahawks game, is the Colts decide to go back to the future at QB. They go back to old man Rivers. And gosh darn it, I'm super excited to see this because, one, I think it's complete malpractice by the Colts organization to put him out there after 3 days of practice, I think it's been. But it also, I think, just screams to the level of views of the quarterbacks in the NFL that are available, that can take reps, that have been in the league, that they clearly aren't good enough to win football games. And the development at this level. And it's been an ongoing conversation in the social media aspect with Kurt Warner and Dan Orlovsky and, a bunch of different media analysts saying like, well, no, that's not what it's saying. Well, to go get a guy that hasn't played for 5 years instead of going to a Riley Leonard or going and picking up somebody else off the street, I think that's a pretty damning issue for the quarterback, level of play in the NFL right now, outside of the starters.
Certainly, third string quarterback development is not there. The thing with Phillip Rivers being the likely starter for the Colts is the familiarity with Shane Steichen because of his days back with the Chargers. But even still, I mean, he can have familiarity all he wants. He's still 44 years old. He has the last time he threw a pass, the COVID vaccines hadn't been issued yet. I mean, remember that playoff game against the Bills, they were still playing in restricted capacity stadiums. That's how long ago we're talking. That was when the NFL still had 16-game regular seasons. And he threw a Hail Mary on the last play of the game, and the ball was at midfield, but he threw it from like inside his 44, 43-yard line. That ball did not reach the end zone. And it wasn't like the conditions were extremely frigid. So if he can't hit a 60-yard pass, that's like Aaron Rodgers can do that right now. He had a Hail Mary against the Bengals earlier in the year, and he still got the arm strength to deliver 65, 70 yards down the field. Rivers' arm was going on him, even though he had a good season in Indianapolis. So the odds of him having the physical ability to go through a whole NFL game against an elite defense, mind you, I think that's extremely low. And this is the type of thing that could cost people jobs in Indianapolis because they had the bad luck of, hey, we're 7-1, and then Daniel Jones has got this crack in his fibula, and now he's got the Achilles tear, and now the season's starting to fall apart. But this is desperation to the nth degree. When Rivers got signed, I thought, okay, he'll just be a practice squad option, and then in a pinch, they'll elevate him. But Riley Leonard's going to start. The fact that Rivers could start, whether he finishes the game or not, is astounding to me because there still has to be a chemistry. I don't think, other than Pittman, I don't think anybody else, and Jonathan Taylor, I don't think anybody else on that Colts roster in terms of targets is somebody Rivers has ever thrown to. So the odds of him having very good chemistry over the span of a few days to run a normal offense against the Seahawks, really against any NFL team, exceptionally low. And we also know that Rivers at his best, not the most mobile quarterback in the world. So what's going to happen if he's got to deal with that pressure in his face? Now, he's normally been good with sack avoidance throughout his career, but like a throwaway, a panic throwaway and committing an intentional grounding here and there, I mean, that's as good as a sack. So I just really question how well this could work out. It's 5 years. For 5 years for a guy who's not Tom Brady.
Yeah, and if you look at his stats that last year in Indianapolis, like they're not horrible. He completed 68% of his passes. They went 11-5. He threw for 4,100 yards, 24 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. But the thing for me that I start looking at when I see, his long touchdown pass of that season was only 55 yards, where before it had been 75, 75, 84, 80, like 60, like to your point, like can he get the ball down the field? And even just looking at, yards per game dropped by almost 20 yards per game as a quarterback over the extent of that last year. So to your point, he was already in a decline that last year at 39. Now you're asking the guy to roll off the couch and try and push you through into the playoffs as a playoff team. Like this to me, again, this just seems like a situation and some media analysts have called it like I'll say it what I think it is. I think it's elder abuse. Like he's going up against the number one defense in the NFL at home. The weather's not going to be necessarily great. And your offensive line, like Braden Smith, I'm pretty sure just got put on IR. Like they're beat up. The Seahawks are going to know Jonathan Taylor's your only real weapon outside of Warren, who's a tight end that's a rookie. You don't think Mike Macdonald's going to bring a whole bunch of different things for Phillip Rivers? And yes, Phillip may complete the odd ball here and there, but is he going to last a whole game where he is just getting beaten up? Like you think of what happened to Kirk Cousins this past weekend with, the Colts or with the Falcons and what Max Brosmer went through with the Vikings. Do you think all of a sudden that's going to let up with a guy that isn't going to be completely familiar with any of the line checks or the protections? He's, again, only been there for a few days. Like, this is just, to me, like you're asking for a serious injury. And I love the competitor that Phillip Rivers is. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love the fact he's willing to, again, forego his Hall of Fame opportunity, push it down the way I think it's 5 more years now. He's got to wait after this season to get his opportunity because he would have been up for it next year. That's the competitor that he is, and I respect that completely. But at what detriment are you doing to yourself the amount of pain you are going to be in come Monday morning?
Yeah, especially for a guy as durable as him historically. I mean, I can't recall him ever missing any games once he became a full-time starter. And indeed, once he became the full-time starter for the Chargers back in 2006, so this is obviously after Breeze left, he never missed a game. And
the championship game versus the Patriots, he played on a torn ACL.
He played on a torn ACL. Well. I mean, that could have history could look down upon the Patriots and the Chargers very differently if Rivers was healthy in that game, because the Patriots only won by 9 points against a one-need quarterback. But again, that was 2007. That is several presidential administrations ago for us, and Mike Holmgren was still the coach of the Seattle Seahawks. So. And I know people, especially Seahawks fans, we've got this kind of PTSD when it comes to Phillip Rivers because he's out of his way with Seattle. He's 3-1 against them lifetime. And the one loss was Earl Thomas's coming out party, if you will, with the 2 interceptions, even after screwing up on a couple of plays. That's where you get that NFL film shots of Pete pumping up Earl and Earl makes the game-winning play. But like that Legion of Boom game, the 2014 game, obviously sticks in the minds of people because it was just other than the longer throws to Antonio Gates, I swear every pass was like 15 yards and in. It was all the underneath stuff. Well, Pete's not here anymore. He's with Vegas for at least the next few weeks. You don't think Mike Macdonald will make sure that they take away all the short stuff? I mean, I don't believe that Rivers is going to have the arm to consistently challenge down the field unless there's some extreme busted coverages, of which the Seahawks have very rarely done that. And another thing to note with Phillip Rivers and that completion percentage, I looked it up before we went on air with a Pro Football Focus. He had one of the highest rates of passes behind the line of scrimmage in the league in that 1 year in Indianapolis. So he was pumping his numbers up on very short throws. So good luck trying to do that against Seattle because they're going to have guys down at the line of scrimmage repeatedly. And while the Colts have a decent receiving group with Josh Downs and Pittman and Alec Pierce, certainly Tyler Warren looks exactly like somebody who's worth the first-round pick. Phillip Rivers is like the broken down car that we're getting out of the garage right now. He needs oil. He needs an oil change. He needs a new set of tires. He needs everything to function. So I've been convinced that we're getting played possum here and that they are going to start Leonard, but all signs point to Indianapolis going, yeah, we're actually going to play him, and we're going to play him a full game. And really, the best thing Seattle could do is don't do any silly stuff that means that Phillip Rivers can hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor 40 times, in which case any NFL quarterback could do that. The minute that it has to be a passing-only situation for Indianapolis, I think that's where the whole operation falls apart for Rivers and the Colts. And even if he somehow gets out of this game, I mean, they play the Texans at the end of the year. They got an even more ferocious pass rush than Seattle in terms of the front four. I mean, how is Rivers going to survive this final month? I don't think he gets out of this game.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting, and just what's hilarious, just on a completely real football note, Madden added him obviously to their game this week, and he has a higher rating coming back into Madden after being off for 4 years than Russell Wilson currently has.
Oh my God.
They gave him a 70 overall rating after sitting out football for 4 years, the people at EA Sports. Now, what I will say that's unfortunate for Phillip Rivers is they also didn't exactly make him the most appealing looking individual. They built Phillip Rivers to look like an offensive lineman. So EA Sports and Madden did Phillip Rivers very, very dirty with him coming back, but they gave him a nice, statistical boost that he's better theoretically than Russell Wilson in the game. So that's something to just kind of ponder there on that. But let's talk about this matchup with the, Seahawks defense versus Colts offense. Excuse me, Mookie. And I think we know what the Colts offensive plan is going to be versus Seahawks defense, but just to put it in some context on why this defense is so elite in Seattle, we're talking about a team that third down defensive rate right now is 33% against teams trying to convert on third down. They're not letting teams convert on third down. We got 40 plus sacks without a blitz dependency scheme. The first question I got to ask you is Seattle's dominance on third down coverage or pressure driven, do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that the coverage has been very good because if you look at all 22, how often do you see receivers open, but the quarterback can't get there in time? I think that they're doing their job, and the front four is getting home pretty quickly. But I believe that this secondary has done a tremendous job in terms of locking receivers down throughout the year. And that's with all the injuries, either a cornerback or safety. I mean, Love's missed over half the year. Witherspoon's missed quite a bit of time. Reek has missed a game or two, I think. Job, I believe, missed a game as well. So with all the injuries, Mike Macdonald has done a tremendous job making sure that everybody, to use Belichick's line, do your job. How often have we seen like this complete bust in coverage in the secondary where a guy is running 10, 15 yards open? So I think that discipline has really gone from top down. And yes, the third down stuff continuing to be strong is impressive, but I think it's the fact that they're much better on early downs that matters to me just as much. Because last year they were a poor early down defense, but great on third down, which means there's a problem here. If you're bad on early downs, they're not even getting to third down. Well, now they're very good all three downs. And the pressure that this unit can generate with just four guys is remarkable. I mean, I forget sim pressures or blitzes or anything, because as you said, they're a very low volume blitzing team. But when you've got Williams and Hall and one of Chenner or Mafe and Tank Lawrence on there, and then you got to add Byron Murphy. I mean, the rotation of guys who are threats to rush the passer is so deep. There might not be a singularly dominant edge rusher on the team, but you certainly have a dominant interior guy in Leonard Williams and an emerging force in Byron Murphy. And to me, on the pressure standpoint, I think that is the biggest change for the Seahawks compared to seasons past, including Mike's first year and throughout the back end of Pete's tenure, is having that interior pressure ability. Even the Legion of Boom team, I mean, you had good guys like Brandon Mebane, Clint McDonald, Tony McDaniel. They could get after the quarterback, but they were not volume sack guys. Whereas Big Cat and Byron Murphy could both have double-digit sacks. And then Jaron Reed, of course, is a guy who's had double-digit sacks for the Seahawks before. But, I mean, he's missed quite a bit of time here, and he's not been as active rushing the passer. But, yeah, there's just a depth to this team at all three phases that makes them so dangerous. And especially on third down, if you get into favorable down and distance against the Seahawks, unfavorable from the offensive standpoint against the Seahawks defense, might as well get the punt team out right away. Save yourself some time.
Yeah, again, we know what the Colts are going to do. They're going to want to run the ball. They're going to turn to Jonathan Taylor, and Seattle knows it. And I think you're going to see Seattle just come at them with everything from the start. It'll be interesting to see what the D-line rotation looks like, knowing that this Colts team is going to run the ball. You don't have to play for a quarterback that's very mobile, if at all. So I wonder how much of a rotation we do see. Do we see guys like maybe Leonard Williams not getting maybe not as many early down reps and more just, hey, it's third down and long. We've stuffed out the run game. Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams go wreak havoc. And we see Brandon Peely and Jaron Reed in the middle more of that defensive front, which should be interesting. So if Indy does find some success, Mookie, where does it come from? Does it come from just Jonathan Taylor alone? I mean, offensively, I'm speaking as much, but does it come from Jonathan Taylor alone, or do you think Phillip Rivers will have to make some key throws early on to get them going?
He's got no choice but to make some throws to make the defense respect him. Otherwise, what do you think the Seahawks are going to do? We stop Taylor, we probably win. And that means throwing to Tyler Warren. Seattle's had some issues covering tight ends, and as great as Nikim and Worry played in that Falcons game, certainly covering tight ends has been an issue for him at times, whether giving up explosives to McBride or to Pitts or to Zach Ertz, I think, way back in the Washington game. So they're going to have to still be wary of Tyler Warren and what he can do, because he is just an extremely talented player and can play quarterback in a pinch, by the way. So they've also not been great at covering slot receivers. I believe Griff Sturgeon, see Mike Spin Move, had mentioned that. They're ranked 21st in that category. So those are basically the two areas. Michael Pittman's been a good player for a while, but nothing Seattle can't handle. So Taylor is going to be the biggest key to this. And ever since Jones had that injury, or at least it was made common knowledge that he'd been dealing with an injury, Taylor has also become less of a threat. He had the 200-something yard game against the Atlanta Falcons. And I mean, that was absolutely sensational. But their explosive run rate has tanked over the last month. I think there's something like 29th in explosive run rate. They haven't hit 100 yards in any of those games. So, and not coincidentally, they're 1-3 during that span. So the formula is there for the Seahawks defense to make life miserable for the Colts. And to me, Taylor is going to be a threat because he's Jonathan freaking Taylor. He's got that type of speed. But this Colts offensive line has struggled. And not having Braden Smith at right tackle, I mean, you're losing a starter. It's not Quentin Nelson, he's not, but he's still a starter. And their backup is a rookie, I believe, and he's got very little NFL experience throughout the year. So I'm confident that this run defense can stymie Taylor. I mean, Bijan Robinson had 80-something yards on 20-something carries, but he didn't have this big breakthrough run. His longest carry was 11. And if Jonathan Taylor has a similar stat line to Bijan Robinson, I will take that gladly. As long as he doesn't burst a huge run, I think Seattle is fine with, hey, he can get his 4 or 5 yards, but as long as he's not busting an explosive play, we'll live with that.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I look at. I think, one thing we'll see is a lot of screens from this Colts offense. I think you'll see them try and run the ball with Taylor, and they'll try and get the ball out of Rivers' hands. I will be interested to see how much under center versus shotgun we see in this game. I feel like you might see more shotgun than anything, just to keep Rivers away from that line and him not have to draw up or do anything like that from under center. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of works. Like, do they use, kind of like what we saw in 2016, I think it was, when Russ sprained his MCL and ankle in that LA game in week 2 after the Miami game. The Seahawks went exclusively to pistol and shotgun to alleviate some of that pressure off of Russ having to move. I wonder if they do a similar thing with Phillip Rivers so they doesn't have to move as much, which then again limits what you can do in a run capacity to some extent. So that'll be an interesting kind of tidbit to see when formationally the Colts line up and play offense this game. Let's flip to the other side, Mookie, and let's look at our Seahawks offense versus Colts defense. In this game, how aggressive do you think Seattle should be in their opening script of plays?
Depends on whether they get the ball first or not, but let's say they get the ball first, have an opportunity to go up 7-0 right away. Do it. Be aggressive, and especially against the Colts secondary. They're not going to have Sauce Gardner. Charvarius Ward, unfortunately, had his 3rd concussion of the year. And given everything he's been through personally and then just on the football field, I don't know how much longer realistically he's going to be in the NFL. But those are your 2 top corners. And Xavier Howard retired in the middle of the season because he was absolutely getting destroyed out there. He looked a shell of his former self. So they've got issues at the back end, and they have been one of the worst in the league in terms of giving up explosive plays in the passing game. They've been better against the run. DeForest Buckner will not play, so the Colts defense is quite undermanned in this instance. But to me, treat this game as you would the other games where you've just blown away your opponent rather in the first half, and be aggressive. Get their play action game going early. So this Falcons game to me was ridiculous that they only had like 3 play action passes or 4 in the first half, of which Darnold got sacked on one of them. Second half, heavy play action. Suddenly the Falcons can't cope. Game's over. I think that they can attack the Colts secondary, use that play action heavily, kind of give them a taste of their own medicine, because Shane Steichen, of course, with his style, you're going to be using play action quite a bit. It was kind of the cheat code for Daniel Jones and part of his resurgence before his injury. But I think there are going to be opportunities for the Seahawks offense to get going against the Colts defense, which is average. They're nothing terrible, but they're nothing great. Lou Anarumo has done a good job of at least elevating them, because Gus Bradley and his never-ending love of never sending pressure at any point in time eventually wore thin in Indianapolis, and they fired him. And Anarumo, after being scapegoated in Cincinnati, gets to be with the Colts, and he's made that defense respectable. So we can expect, however, some of those exotic blitzes. I think we're going to see some creative looks up front to try and confuse Darnold and confuse this offensive line. But in general, there's just a talent deficit right now for the Colts in terms of what's going on with their corners and what the Seahawks can provide a receiver. I specifically said corners because Cameron Bynum, their safety was brought over from Minnesota, he has been one of their bright spots. So they still have to be, they still have to be paying attention to him. But the cornerback situation should be a big game to me again for JSN. Doesn't look like it's going to rain as much as was forecasted, if at all, really.
Well, looking at the weather forecast, I legitimately just pulled it up to have a look right now. And again, on another note, outside of football, for everyone that's dealing with the floods and that down in Seattle and the Washington areas, we're thinking about you guys. You're in our thoughts and in our prayers with everything you guys are dealing through right now. So hopefully things get better in the near future here, and things calm down for you guys down there. Looking at it, Mookie, it says at kickoff, it will be mainly cloudy with some wind gusts, humidity about 88%, potential for precipitation 30%. So it's definitely gone down, which is good. It says it won't potentially rain again until 4:00, which would be, I think, around the fourth quarter of that game. So hopefully by that time, Seattle's got it kind of all sewn up at that point and can just grind out the ball with running it. Speaking to that, Mookie, though, what's an early offensive red flag for you where you look at it and you go, man, if the offense is doing this, like, this is a problem and this is something we need to get fixed? Like, what would be an early offensive red flag for you?
If they get into too many true drop back situations and they can't function, because to me, that could be the potential downfall of the Seahawks offense moving forward, is that they're amazing in play action, but Darnold's EPA per drop back is kind of middle of the pack when it is just not play action. It is best in the league when he is doing play action. So it's not to say Darnold's incapable of doing straight drop back stuff. It's just that I think the scheme in general is not conducive to getting into pure passing situations. But you're going to have to be good at it at some point. You can't just rely on play action forever, especially if you by any chance fall behind by enough of a deficit that you can't really do play action. In terms of any other red flag, I would say if the running game continues to have these lulls that put Seattle in unfavorable down and distance situations, then that gives the Colts an opportunity. And my biggest gripe, one of my bigger gripes with Kubiak, is how often he will run the ball on 2nd and 10. So after an incomplete pass on 1st and 10, he loves to run on 2nd and 10. And most of the time, those are not successful run plays. So you're setting yourself up for 3rd and long voluntarily, of which the Seahawks don't go into 3rd and long a lot. But when they do, they are the worst in the league at converting them. So they have to do a much better job at staying ahead of the chains in order to either avoid 3rd down or have more manageable 3rd downs. It's interesting because they are a really, really good 3rd down team when it's 6 yards and in, and 7 and beyond, they can't do it. So this is not a case of they're a bad third down team across the board like previous Seahawks teams have been. They just needed to either get first downs early or get into third and manageable, and then everything else will work itself out. But some of these third and longs we've been seeing the last few weeks, they're going to have to cut those out.
Yeah, that's the one thing for me with the Seattle offense is also turnovers. Like they've got to kill the turnover bug. And again, this 4-game stretch. As much as we want to look past the Colts and look at like, the Colts and everything. Like, yes, Seattle should dominate this game and should win this game. But then it's a short week into the Rams. Try and play as much mistake-free football as you can. It's your last home game of the year, potentially, I will say that. You need to be firing on all cylinders in that game. And the thing for me that is my biggest gripe, to your point on Kubiak, one is that second. The other thing for me, Mookie, is it feels like sometimes he's so stuck in his script of however many plays, whether it's 10 to 15 plays, that when teams are actually giving him something or the format on which those plays ideally are to be scripted from isn't there. Like when I look at the Falcons game last week, why are you throwing 2 bubble screens on your own 12-yard line? It made no sense. Bubble screens don't work until you've at least got a defense to collapse in a little bit so you can get it outside to JSN or and then you put your quarterback in a straight drop back situation with the goal line right behind him where he's not got anywhere to go and it basically acts as a 12th defender. Like there's moments with Kubiak where I look at it and I go like, how does that make sense to you? Like, why are you not running the ball and just trying to flip the field, get a first down, flip the field and hope that when you get the ball back, you're now out at your 25 or 30 and then you can truly get into your script. It's things like that with him where I just kind of I still ponder, and I know there's a whole bunch of conversation on whether or not he's going to be a head coaching candidate and whatnot, and what would Seattle do. I think Hawk Blogger put out something today that he wonders if is it Grant Udinsky, the coach that went to the Vikings down in Jacksonville, if he'd be a candidate if Kubiak were to leave, that Seattle would tag him because he'd get play calling duties in Seattle. I think the 2 guys that Seattle would turn to replace Kubiak with are already in-house, and Andrew Janoko and Jake Peets are 2 guys that they would turn to potentially if Kubiak were to leave. But I don't think Kubiak's going anywhere. I think he's going to be in Seattle because I don't know if there's a job out there where he may look at it and go like, yeah, this is where I'm set up for success.
Yeah, and also he's moved around so much. He's been to so many different teams. The last 2 times he's been an offensive coordinator, the coaching staff got fired. That is not happening this year. So while I'm sure if there was a head coaching opportunity, he would think about it. I'm not sure that he'll necessarily be a hot head coaching candidate once the season's over. And you do have to wonder how many job openings there will actually be. Certainly there's one with the Giants. Has there been any other midseason firing? The Titans. So those 2. And then the Raiders could be another one. But who would want that Raiders job with the frequency of which guys get fired there? And then Tampa Bay might be one to watch for because Todd Bowles looks like he's kind of losing that team. I don't think that the Steelers would go after Clint Kubiak if, say, they move on from Tomlin or Tomlin steps away. Miami, I think Mike McDaniel's probably saved his job at this rate, and they'll just start anew with a different GM. I don't think it's going to be like this incredibly grim Black Monday. Maybe Raheem Morris in Atlanta is somebody else to watch in terms of potential firing. And then Arizona, I don't think that Kubiak is going to leave for a division rival. And Arizona, there hasn't been an inkling that Gannon is going to get fired. They might get rid of Kyler, but in terms of Gannon getting fired, I don't think that's happening. So even with the usual Black Monday firings, I don't think there are going to be enough spots for that many people to take up jobs, and then Kubiak becomes a hot coaching candidate.
Yeah, I just think for him, he's best to stay. I'd stay out at least 3 years in Seattle, this plus 2 more, then really have your opportunity to go. You can show the stability of your offense and the thing, because again, to your point, Mookie, he's bounced around so much. And when he has left a place, he's never gone as a coordinator to the next. It's like I've been a coordinator and then I become a receiver coach and a pass game coordinator, and then I'm something else, a quality control, and then I'm back to being a coordinator. Like he's never consistently transitioned from coordinator to coordinator to coordinator, except for this from the Saints to Seattle is the first time he's gone coordinator to coordinator kind of a role. So that's something. But here's the last thing I'll ask you. What is a clean game for Sam Darnold here this Sunday?
Clean game for Darnold, no turnovers, and no silly why am I throwing this ball when I could throw it away or scramble? That's really my thing. And also, no fumbling on sacks. So, some instances, you can't help it. If a guy chops your arm from behind, you're probably going to fumble. But he's been prone to fumbling throughout this year, and he's lost, what, 5 or 6 of them. One of them I'm not going to ding him for because Timmy had apparently a bad snap in the Arizona game. And the botched exchange will normally get faulted to the quarterback, even if it's not necessarily his fault. But that pick against Atlanta was an irksome one because that felt too much like some of the picks that Geno made and even Russ in his final few years made, where yeah, there are yards there for you to run, or there's a check down option, and you decided to get greedy and make this tight window throw that is just danger lurking around the corner. So Darnold's been good in lately since the Rams game, not being a volume turnover guy. It's really just 2 games where a lot of his turnovers come. 3 against Arizona, and we have some context for that. And then the 4 against the Rams, in which case, yeah, that was terrible. He was lucky he only had 4 in that game. But as long as he just stays efficient, stays playing on time, doesn't put the ball in harm's way, and just takes the easy yards given to him, whether a check down or scrambling. You saw at the end of the first half, he was able to scramble for either a first down or close to it. And you go, Sam is not kind of like Geno in this sense. They might not be known for their mobility, but they're not statues out there. They can run. They have opportunities to go get yards. And I will take a safe 4-yard run out of bounds over, let me try this risky throw for 15 yards. So just do that, play clean football, and I think they can get out of there just fine.
Yeah, I'm kind of under the same thing. The one thing I want to see from Sam is I want to see a good volume, but I want to see completions and I want to see check downs. I want to see him check it down when, he gets through his progression. And I don't want to see these panic, I'm out of the pocket, look to the second level rather than the guy right in front. I'd rather look, hey, either the guy in front's open or I'm going to run for some yards and get in the habit a little bit of that. Because even Kubiak, I think, alluded to that in his press conference this week, that's something they keep kind of reinforcing to Sam, like use your legs. Like it's a weapon. Use your legs. Don't just rely on your arms. So we'll go into this segment a little bit, hidden downs where the game can tilt, just some situational data we'll give the listeners here. So third down situations, Seahawks defense obviously has a stop rate of 33%. They are one of the better units right now in the NFL. They're only allowing a conversion rate, I should say, of 33%. The Colts offense converts about 43% of their third downs, but that's going to change a lot now with Phillip Rivers being in at quarterback. So we'll see how that all shapes up this Sunday. The other interesting one is the Seahawks offense on third downs is converting about 40% of the time, and the Colts defense is giving up about 42% third down conversion. So that number there, I think, is the most interesting one, where I think this is an opportunity for even Seattle's third down offense to get better in this game, Mookie. The one question I'll ask you in this, Mookie, is do you believe Mike Macdonald should be more aggressive on fourth downs?
Absolutely. And I know Phillip Rivers is on the other side, or Riley Leonard, or Brett Rippon, or Tyler Warren, or they bring back Jim Sorgi for a day. I mean, they've got whoever's lining up at quarterback. Any chance you have to end the game sooner, I think you take it. Now, don't be stupid about it. Like if it's 4th and 1 at your own 19 and it's, 10-3 in the second quarter, I don't really think that there is a need to go for it there. Just punt the ball away. In this instance, unlike where Pete kind of just kept coaching like he still had the Legion of Boom, you can trust your defense to probably get the ball back and flip the field position. But otherwise, I feel like he is a little bit too, I don't want to say timid, but too hesitant to go for it on fourth down, especially when you have a play that works as often as the barnyard does. If it's 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1, just run the barnyard. And no shifting out of it, no fancy stuff that completely blows up in your face, because it's happened twice already. That's a play that for at the moment, opposing defenses cannot stop, and indeed opposing defenses have jumped off sides twice now trying to stop it. So I think that they should be more aggressive on fourth down when warranted. Doesn't mean go for it on fourth down every time. I don't ascribe wholly to this whole take the points thing, because take the points. First of all, kickers are apparently like 100% success rate for in hindsight, and Jason Myers has had a very good year. But to me, if you're going for a touchdown, you're taking a different points. You're taking 7 over 3. And at least on the Colts side of the field, I think they should go for it more often. In your own territory, it very much depends on game script. But deep in Colts territory, or even like the 45 and in, I think those should be go for it situations and try and put 7 on the board as much as possible.
Agreed. I think he needs to be a little bit more aggressive, especially at midfield. Sometimes I think we play a little bit too much to, hey, let's punt it or try these long field goals. No, go for it and try and get the first down and go get a touchdown. Don't rely on these 50-yarders. I get Myers has had a good year. In the playoffs, you're going to need to have more comfort in going for it on fourth down because you don't have another game the following week if you don't get this figured out. So I'm in agreement, Mookie. Let's move on to 3 keys here, Mookie, for Seahawks victory. Key 1, stop Jonathan Taylor and control the Colts run game. It's pretty simple that way. Don't allow them to get going. Don't let Jonathan Taylor to get downhill or get short throw completions. I think it can't be much more simpler than that because, like you said, if we stop Jonathan Taylor and make Phillip Rivers beat us, I think you could pretty much tell the Colts punt majority of the downs and the game will be over a lot faster that way. Key number 2, pressure without gifting. So Seattle's gotten 40 sacks without being blitz heavy. The Colts have allowed 20 sacks. And again, you don't have a mobile quarterback. At least Daniel Jones, when healthy, was mobile enough. Riley Leonard was mobile enough. They could get out, make some things happen. Phillip Rivers ain't moving anywhere. If Phillip Rivers starts moving, we might as well time that movement on a sundial. So, I just think at that point, collapse the pocket, bring as much pressure at points as you want to. If I was Macdonald, I'd even probably blitz a little bit more because I think Rivers' timing and ability to get the ball out and know where it needs to go is going to be slower than it used to.
Yeah, his reflexes are probably going to be slower. And look, Phillip Rivers is a great football mind. That's why he has been in Hall of Fame consideration. He carves up coverages in his sleep when he's also physically able to. Just because you have the mental acuity to do something doesn't mean you still have the physical ability. Even Tom Brady in his final year, he could beat you with his brain, but then you notice that a lot of his throws are just immediately into the dirt because he couldn't deal with getting hit. So with Phillip Rivers, I don't think he's concerned about getting hits that much because he's a wild man. But a couple of hits from Seattle's front 7 might change his mind a bit.
Imagine a hit from unblocked Eamon Worry or Derek Hall might change Phillip Rivers' mind on that. Key number 3 in the last one, the Seahawks offense needs to stay on schedule and protect possessions. Chew the clock out, score touchdowns, end this game quickly so you can start looking to potentially rest some guys for that Thursday nighter versus the Rams.
Yeah, definitely. Another blowout would be welcome. This is one of those things where Seattle's been very fortunate that you get the Vikings with Brosmer instead of McCarthy. I know McCarthy had a great game last week, but McCarthy as a whole has been terrible this season. And then you get Cousins, and Kirk Cousins has been good only against the Buccaneers and pretty much nobody else since his time in Atlanta started. But timing is everything. People who are lamenting like, man, why couldn't we play this Tampa Bay team with Mayfield struggling and not looking like an MVP candidate? Well, it goes both ways. You're playing the Colts right now, struggling to score and without Daniel Jones for the rest of the season, as opposed to in early October when Daniel Jones was playing at a very good level and Jonathan Taylor was looking like an MVP candidate and they were the number 1 scoring offense in the league. So it can break both ways. I'd say they're quite fortunate not to be playing the hot version of the Colts and instead this one where, yeah, they still got some guys. You still have to respect them as an opponent, but this ain't the same team from the first half of the year.
And I think it's a good way for them to kind of, if they're going to play this, to be honest, if you look at this, I look at this as a blessing in disguise for Seattle. They're playing a Colts team that's beat up going into a massive, and I mean, probably the biggest game the Seahawks have played in a decade against the Rams this Thursday, where the Rams are going to have to play the Detroit Lions, which is going to be a much more physical game going into a short week. That's going to be, interesting to see how that all kind of plays out. But Mookie, we've been on here for an hour going on this preview. Let's get into some questions and comments from our 12s that have been in the chat. And we'll wrap the show up probably in the next 15 minutes here and let everyone else get back to enjoying the rest of their Saturdays before Seahawks football on Sunday. So first one up here in the chat. Let's see. We got Big Mike. He goes, are you guys like me and you know exactly where you were when the Beast Quake happened? Yeah, I was in the stadium when it happened.
Oh man, I'm jealous of you. So I was at home and yelling my voice off. I think that puberty hit just well enough that the voice cracks had long gone. But yes, I remember being at home that day and watching in front of the big screen TV in the living room. And up to that point, that was like the best moment I've seen of Seahawks football, including the Super Bowl run, because that looked like a game where Seattle had no chance to win, even at 17-7. And then they surprised everybody. And then Beastquake happened. Some of you probably thought at the time when it was like 34-27, it was like 34-20, then 34-30, that they didn't get a first down here, they're going to lose the game. And then the greatest run in the history of the playoffs happens. And it probably changed the whole trajectory of the Seahawks franchise and maybe some of the perception of Pete Carroll just off of that game.
That was because I had been there the week before for the Rams game that they needed to win to get into the playoffs, and had to watch the Charlie Whitehurst game with, big plays to Ravel Martin down the sidelines and such. And then came back to watch that playoff game, that wild card game. And I just remember I was on the second level, and I remember watching that and going, this is different. There is a vibe change to this team that is going on right now. And, it's one of those interesting things where you talk to people and you're like, can you be present in a moment? Not looking behind, just be present. And it was probably one of the few times I've been able to be present in a moment. And it was unbelievable just to feel that vibe change from the city, the fans, everything there. It was like, for once, the Seahawks are going in a different direction off of that one run alone. So that's where I was, Mike. That's where Mookie was. Thanks for bringing that comment up. And then we got one more from Mike here. He goes, can Arroyo come back for playoffs?
Yeah. He can't come back for the regular season. But again, they only have 2 spots that open up for the playoffs. So they've still got 2 left for the regular season. I think that they can roll over minutes on cell phone plans. But even still, I guess Mike Macdonald will provide us an answer on Sunday after the game, or even Monday in his usual radio hit or press conference, as to why Arroyo went from day to day to many days away.
So we've got one from Lil Ben here. Goes, Torrey Horton is coming back for playoffs. I'm not so sure on that one. I think we talked about it a little bit at length here, Mookie. I could see Torrey Horton potentially being done for the year.
I appreciate your optimism as far as Horton coming back for the playoffs, because if it happens, that's great. But in lieu of that, I sure as heck hope that Rashid Shaheed's game against Atlanta can now start to snowball into, all right, he's getting a little more comfortable in this offense, and he can be the Horton replacement instead of the Horton complement like we were hoping he would be.
Agreed. We've got Amy Holmes, our moderator, and Amy does such a fantastic job looking after the Hawk side chat for me. Goes, I'm concerned that Sundell to center means a drop in AB's performance and a drop in the run game.
Drop in the run game is definitely possible, because I just remember when he got hurt and how instantly better the run game looked against Arizona with Oluwatimi in there. But I don't think they were particularly good in the run game against Atlanta. They had 3 good run plays make up over half the yards. So I don't know whether or not Sundell versus Oluwatimi makes Bradford any better or worse. So I'm not quite sure on that. But with Sundell, I think it's just he's a better athlete, and I'm hoping that we can see more second level stuff from him than we've really been seeing out of Olu.
So here's an interesting thing I wonder is, does Sundell have potentially more success in this run game now due to lighter boxes being present because of the Shaheed factor a little bit?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because Shaheed is also somebody you kind of have to respect in the run game for some of the gadget stuff they're doing, but also that you still have a more seasoned, a more credible intermediate and deep threat than you do with Horton, who's only just gotten into the league, whereas Shaheed has already shown through 3 seasons that he can be someone who stretches the field.
This is where I wonder for Sundell, because he hadn't really gotten the effects of Shaheed lightning boxes yet for defenses in the run game, because he was still having to play against those majority stack boxes. So this will be an interesting thing, Amy. I don't know if we'll see a drop in AB's performance, because I think he's at a point now with the Mike Macdonald call out where he knows he's on notice in a way of like he has an expectation to keep going. And I don't think there's a situation where Bradford hasn't heard the criticism from Seahawks fans and analysts throughout the league. So, I think hopefully he keeps his play going through the back end of the season here, and we get a, solid performance for him, and hopefully he can parlay that into a good 2026, potentially, wherever that may be. And I don't think it'll be in a Seahawks uniform in 2026. Let's move on to this one. We got Dogzilla in here. Always great to have you in the chat. Dogzilla goes, why does Philip Rivers smile so much? Because he can't hear a word anyone is saying. Well done, sir. Well done. I appreciate that. That is, that's a good one. I wonder how, you know what? I'm going to be interested. I hope for this game, Mookie, they mic up Philip Rivers, because I want to hear how much chirping he does coming back into the league. Because that was one of his biggest things. It was about his play style was he chirped and he didn't swear. I wonder how much chirping we'll hear out of Philip Rivers on Sunday coming back, or how much he receives, for that matter, from other guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, Andrew Luck was a legendary mic'd up guy because of how different his chirping was, because it's so complimentary.
Totally. Gary Swan from over on the other side of the pond goes, find the possibility of starting Rivers is a really weird decision. Don't understand the thinking. I think it's pretty simple from their point of view. They view him as a better option right now, Gary, than they do Riley Leonard of playing.
I don't know if this is like fear that he'll get Brosmered as well, because I don't really have any thoughts about Riley Leonard being an actual good NFL quarterback. He's got the mobility, but also he's kind of used as a battering ram type of mobility, closer to a Taysom Hill type. And then as a passer, I think he's really just not refined enough consistently. But even still, I would have started him over a guy who has not played in 5 years. I don't care how good Rivers has been. The thing is, has been. The keywords are has been.
What are you talking about? He is a higher rated quarterback in Madden 26 than Russell Wilson.
Exactly.
That tells you all you need to know, Mookie. All you need to know. I'm just saying. We got Amy Holmes back in the chat. She goes, be careful, everyone getting your expectations up again. Did that with Shaheed. Give them time to get rolling. And I believe Amy's referring to Riley Mills here, because a lot of people were really excited about Riley Mills coming back and being active. I agree with Amy here. Like, just he won as a rookie. He didn't have a preseason. He didn't have a training camp like you alluded to, Mookie. It's going to be a bit of an adjustment period for Riley Mills.
Yeah, what he's had is a few padded practices, and that's it.
Pretty much. Brian Myers, Ayuk is not coming back this year. That situation in San Francisco is just probably going to go down as one of the all-time worst contract extensions in the NFL.
Yeah, it's crazy because it was kind of like a choice between Ayuk and Debo, and they traded Debo, extended Ayuk, and now they're probably not going to have either. Well, Debo's already gone. They're not going to have Ayuk next year. I don't know what's going to happen with Jawan Jennings. I mean, they could have a very different receiving group next year. And even Ricky Pearsall, since coming back from injury, has not been the same in terms of effectiveness. So, and yet the 49ers keep winning, and then you look at their schedule, and we might be cheering the fact that we're playing a depleted Colts team. Well, guess who the Colts get to play the week after Seattle? So there was a slight miscalculation there when we want the Niners to lose another game.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this will be an interesting conversation for me when I have Jason Aponte on at the end of the year to discuss the 49ers matchup. I'm really going to ask him what his thoughts are on this whole Brandon Ayuk situation and the 49ers focus going forward. We got Sean the Scotchman in here. Goes, score first and quick, get high scoring, then maybe we can rest some of our vets for the Rams game. 100%. That would be an ideal situation where we see more of the Drew Lock cigar. And that's one of the things I'm going to make. I'm going to make that as a, background or drop back, is just Drew Lock with a smoking cigar coming out. Because when we know Drew Lock's in the game, things are okay. We're going to be just fine.
Yes. Jump on them early. And we don't have to keep worrying about, oh man, they're going to make this game close in the fourth quarter. Like, forget it. He's been in the game 5 times already. Seattle has had no issue getting blowout wins this year.
We've got Amy back in. Goes, would Janoko stay if Kubiak goes? Personally, I don't think Kubiak will leave. I don't think he's going to leave either. But if Janoko gets an opportunity to be an offensive coordinator, it might be the way he ends up departing from going and following Kubiak everywhere. Yeah,
and as we recall, and certainly you recall, when we were at FanFest, it wasn't Kubiak calling the plays.
It was not. It was Andrew Janoko calling the plays. So that'll be interesting. I think if it does come down to one, if Kubiak leaves, I think it'll be a Janoko or a Pete's hire internally. That'll be their promotion to keep continuity of the scheme and what they want to do offensively. Because I think Mike Macdonald likes the offensive scheme they have. Obviously, I'm pretty sure he wishes the run game was more effective, but I think he wants to keep the continuity as much as he can. And it's unfortunate because, with Coach Polamalu having to leave, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays into the run game, because he's probably one of the best running back coaches in the NFL. So hopefully he's able to return in 2026.
Yep.
We got Corey in the house. Haven't seen Corey for a while. Glad you're here, Corey. The Seahawks second half adjustment should have been the starting plan versus the Falcons. Yes, they should have been, but it's something that clearly they've got to live and learn from, apparently, Corey. I totally agree with you, though.
But they've also had games where they've been up 38-6 and 35-0 at the half. So they're capable of giving you the business either way.
And we got a super chat. Thank you, Kumar, for your $2 donation. Goes Lions beat the Rams tomorrow. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote earlier in the week, there is a path for Seattle, however unlikely it may be, for them to win the division and actually get the 1 seed before week 18. Like by the end of week 17, everything would be set for Seattle. They could rest guys in week 18. The Lions beating the Rams is absolutely one of those results. In case the Rams beat the Lions as expected and Seattle beats the Colts as expected, then the magic number for Seattle is 1. That means they either have to win one more game or the Lions have to lose one more game, and Seattle is in the playoffs. So even if the Lions lose tomorrow, as long as the Seahawks win on Sunday, not necessarily the worst thing in the world if the Rams win. We'd love for them to lose, but it just eases the possibility of some backdoor fallout of the wild card, because, man, the NFC is stupidly competitive this year.
Yeah, it really is this year. Like it's interesting that it's that competitive, because I think when we thought at the beginning of the year, we thought it would be, but it's been ridiculously competitive, where two of the top teams in the NFC in the NFL, for that matter, are the Seahawks and Rams. And you can even throw, when healthy, the 49ers.
Yep. And they're not going to get healthy anytime soon with some of the guys they're missing, but I have to respect Kyle Shanahan for what he's done. I don't care how easy their schedule has been. They're finding ways to win.
Here's one from John McGrath in the chat. Goes, what about Sundell at center and Cable do at right guard? John, I know you're done with the Bradford experiment. That will not happen. That situation you're talking about, unless there are a bunch of injuries at right guard this year. I think that is more of a conversation for the 2026 training camp. If Cable has a full offseason of now transitioning from tackle to guard at the NFL level, that he will have the ability to actually compete at that spot.
You can revisit that line in 2026, but for 2025, ain't happening.
It is not at all. And let's see, what else do we got in here before we end out today's show? I'm just looking here, see if there's any other good ones. Oh, here we go. Mazer Guru, do you think this D is better than the LOB? No, I don't. I don't think so. I will put it this way. The 2013 Seahawks defense is still the pinnacle defense of this franchise, the team that won the Super Bowl. I believe this defense has more of a conversation for the 2014 back-to-back year defense that lost the Patriots, of being in the conversation of potentially being better than that version, because that version had lost a few depth pieces in there that had caused it to drop down a little bit. Mookie, what do you think?
I'll tell you what, one area of this defense is better than the Legion of Boom, the run defense. Because even the 2013 team, why did they fall behind 21-0 against the Bucs? Because they were getting run over by, I think, Mike James, a total journeyman running back. Or why did that Rams game, the Monday night one where it was like 14-9, and they were letting Darrell Richardson rush for well over 100 against them. So they had some run defense trouble. So they were like 7th or 8th. They were a good run defense without being great. This is a great run defense, objectively. They've had so few hiccups, it's astonishing. The pass defense, though, that's where there's a separation, because Clemens and Averill are still, and Bennett, that three I would take over Mafe, Hall, and Chenna. But there's certainly some dudes on this roster who would be totally in comfortability on the Legion of Boom defense.
I agree. And maybe that's something I'll do this offseason on our show, is we'll take, after the season's over, and we'll construct the Seahawks all-time defense and see how many guys from this version actually now sneak into that group of being on that all-time unit there. Because I think, to your point, Mookie, there are a few guys that could definitely fit in as whether they're depth pieces or starting capable players into that group. And I can say one that I think would start in that secondary, and that would be Devin Witherspoon playing the opposite corner spot that Byron Maxwell held down in that 2013 group.
Well, even if you just played Spoon in the slot, I mean, he's an upgrade over Walter Thurman, and you could still keep
That's
Maxwell,
true.
Thurman, and Spoon. So like, there's so many. Where would you place Ernest Jones? Like, Ernest just got to compete with Prime Bobby. You're going to move.
KJ.
Yeah, you're going to move Ernest to weak side. I mean, Julian Love is not going to be able to get a starting. He can be the extra safety, but the extra safety back for the Legion of Boom was what, Jerron Johnson, or like Shed wasn't on the team at the time. So,
no.
Yeah.
All right, Mookie, let's get the final word here. Give me your score prediction for this game. What do you think the final score is tomorrow?
Somewhat similar to the Falcons game. So let's go with, I don't know, 34-10. The Colts might get one surprise drive where Taylor hits a big run or something, and they get a short field, either through a turnover or a nice punt return or something. But other than that, the Seahawks are going to win, I think, pretty comfortably. The Colts are in a downturn, and all the stats you can put up for the Colts in terms of their points and their explosiveness, you have to throw that out the window when you got Phillip Rivers starting at quarterback. Like, the only thing that you can point to is that Jonathan Taylor is still Jonathan Taylor, and even then, he's not been effective the last 3 weeks. So 34-10 Seattle, more cheers, and then it clinches a winning home record for the Seahawks, which, given the recent struggles, is not an insignificant thing. They'd be 5-2 at home with a game to spare.
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to be a little bit more drastic on this. I think it's going to be 38-0 Seattle. I don't think the Colts score in this game, to the point of just, to your point, Phillip Rivers and Jonathan Taylor is really their only offensive weapon, and we've seen what teams have been able to do to Jonathan Taylor given Daniel Jones's injury. So I'm going a shutout for Seattle at home. I think it's 38-0, and I think it's a situation where we see Drew Lock towards the end of the third quarter steps in, and we see some of these Seahawks players rested for that Thursday night matchup, which is going to be absolutely huge on Thursday night versus the LA Rams. So I'm going 38-0. Mookie, we're both looking at a blowout here for Seattle. Outside of that, Mookie, what's going on at field goals? What can we expect for game day coverage tomorrow for the Seahawks Colts game?
Well, once we're off air, I will get to work on my 5 predictions for the Seahawks versus Colts. I was really good with my predictions last week. I even called the special teams touchdown as my bold prediction. I think that's the first bold prediction I've gotten right all season, or maybe my second. So we'll see how this week's predictions go. After the game, there will be op-eds of the day of the game, me, winners and losers, John Fraley with his words of prey, Ted Zahn, normally I put in for the next day, and Michael Thompson the day after as well, with his 4 down territory. So we've got all sorts of op-eds and news write-ups we'll do after the game that'll have you just glued to field goals throughout the evening. And we will also have a playoff picture update, because we are not just focusing on our game. Have every reason to focus on the Rams game, even the Titans 49ers game in case the Titans shock the world. And I know there's one other game I'm thinking of, and the Packers Broncos game and the Bears-Browns game, because those games are also relevant for 1C purposes. So it's not just our game. There's a whole lot to focus on throughout Sunday in terms of whether or not Seattle can actually make that 1C push.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And guys, if you haven't already, head over to Field Goals. Make sure that's bookmarked on your phone browser or in your computer, and follow along with all the stuff that comes out over there. As for here on the Hawks Eye, we will be having obviously an instant reaction show following the game tomorrow. So probably about an hour to an hour and a half after the game, I'll go live to talk with you guys about how you feel about the Seahawks victory. And then we will be doing a Seahawks aftermath next week as well, probably on Monday or maybe even on the Tuesday. Not sure yet. Got to work the details out because I've got a kind of a busy week next week. So I'll work that out with Michael Thompson over there, and we'll go live with Seahawks aftermath. So a couple cool different things on that front. But outside of that, again, I just want to thank everyone for you guys' support of the Hawks Eye. You've been able to make it a opportunity for me to go down to Senior Bowl this year and cover that in January, which will be a really awesome event to be a part of. As well as next year, I will tell everyone now, but myself, Mookie Alexander, Dan Vians, and Brandon Kane will be doing a week at Seahawks training camp and providing live updates as the Seahawks syndicate group down there, covering the Seahawks live at training camp next year. So that will be another fun thing for everyone to pay attention to on that end. But before we get out of here, Mookie, we've got a couple other comments that popped in that I want to grab here. We got 30 and Wake Up says, you'd think the Colts didn't have the league's leading rusher. No disrespect to Jonathan Taylor at all, but when you don't have a quarterback that can do the other part of your offense, it's going to make it very difficult for you to be successful as a running back.
Remember when Joe Webb had to start a playoff game for an injured Christian Ponder the year Peterson had 2,000 yards rushing? So yeah, just think about that.
All right, and then we've got 12 talk in here. Josh and Mitch over there on the other side of the pond. Our thoughts go out to Philip Rivers, his wife, 57 children and grandchildren ahead of tomorrow's game against the Seahawks defense. Yes, very much so. Start writing that obituary, apparently, is what a lot of people seem to be thinking. And if you guys haven't already, head on over to the 12 Talk YouTube page and TikTok and all the social media platforms. Josh and Mitch do a fantastic job over there covering the Seahawks from over in England. So make sure you guys go over there, give them some support, subscribe to their channel, as well as Brandon Kane at the Hawk Nest and Dan Vians at Seahawks Forever. Sub up to all those guys if you haven't already. They do fantastic work. And the last thing I'll touch on here is from John. He goes, we're taking one more step closer to 13-4 tomorrow, Bryce. Hey, if they end up being 13-4, I can officially rub it in Dan's face a little bit in waiver, and I stuck with my initial regular season prediction from training camp. So I will take some solace in that. I am hoping for that 13-4 as well, John. But with that being said, again, thank you everybody for being here and tuning in tonight. Appreciate it all as always. And as we always like to sign off here, stay loud, be proud, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Have a good night, everybody.